He thought his life was over the second red wine splashed across her white suit. A single dad, just trying to hold on to his job, watched the tray slip from his shaking hands. But instead of fury, the billionaire looked him in the eye and said words so shocking he nearly collapsed. "I've been looking for you for years. What secret could connect a struggling waiter to one of the richest women in the country? And why does a child's whispered confession, 'Mommy says you're my daddy,' threaten to destroy everything they've built?" As lies spread, power strikes back, and families are torn apart, one question burns. Will truth and compassion be enough to defeat a man who thinks he owns the whole town? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn wind carried hints of wood smoke and dying leaves as Gabe Alvarez set down his fork. Across the small kitchen table, Sophia pushed green beans around her plate, her foot tapping a nervous rhythm against the chair leg. "You barely touched your chicken." Gabe kept his voice gentle. "The scholarship audition had been weighing on her for weeks. My stomach feels like it's full of butterflies doing backflips." Sophia's dark eyes met his. "What if I mess up the Bach piece? What if my bow shakes?" Gabe reached across the scratched wood surface and covered her hand with his calloused one. "Remember what Mom used to say about fear? That it's just excitement wearing a disguise." Sophia's voice softened at the mention of her mother. "That's right." He squeezed her fingers. "You've been playing that piece since spring. Your teacher says you could perform it in your sleep. Mrs. Chen doesn't know how many kids are trying for this scholarship. There's only one spot, Dad." The wall clock ticked toward 5:30. Gabe needed to leave in 10 minutes to make his shift, but his daughter needed him more than the Harborview Hotel did right now. "Want to pray about it?" Sophia nodded, and they joined hands across the table. The prayer came out simple and honest words about courage and peace, about doing their best and trusting the rest. When Gabe opened his eyes, Sophia's shoulders had dropped from their tense position near her ears. "I'll be back late tonight. The gala runs until midnight, maybe later if they need help with breakdown." He stood and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the vanilla scent of her shampoo. "There's leftover soup in the fridge if you get hungry later. I'll just practice until my fingers fall off. Don't overdo it. Rest is part of preparation too." In the bedroom, Gabe pulled on his server's uniform, crisp white shirt, black vest, bow tie, that always sat crooked no matter how many times he adjusted it. The fabric smelled of industrial starch. His reflection in the mirror showed a man older than his 52 years, gray threading through black hair, lines carved deep around his eyes. Two jobs had a way of aging a person fast. Outside, the October air bit through his thin jacket. He walked quickly, cutting through Veterans Park where the memorial fountain had already been drained for winter. The town spread before him in layers, modest row houses, giving way to the renovated waterfront district where the Harborview Hotel stood like a limestone giant. $1,500 for rent, $400 for Sophia's violin lessons, another $200 for her school fees and supplies. The numbers ran through his mind with each step. The hotel job covered basics. The morning shift at the distribution center kept them from drowning, but barely. A couple passed him, the woman's heels clicking on concrete, the man's cologne trailing expensive notes of sandalwood. They headed toward the hotel too, guests, not staff. Gabe wondered what it felt like to walk through those doors as someone who belonged at a $500 a plate charity dinner. The Harborview's service entrance sat tucked between two dumpsters. Gabe punched his code and descended to the basement level where the staff areas hummed with pre-event energy. Servers hurried past carrying pressed linens. Someone dropped a tray of silverware, the crash echoing off concrete walls. "Alvarez, you're on stations 3 and 4 tonight." Barry Hutchins, the banquet manager, didn't look up from his clipboard. "Wine service during cocktail hour, then you're running plates for dinner service." "Got it." The staff break room smelled of microwaved leftovers and strong coffee. Gabe pinned on his name tag, straightened his bow tie one more time. Through the walls, he heard the distant sound of a string quartet warming up. "Big money tonight." said Janet, one of the senior servers, as she adjusted her lipstick in the mirror. "The mayor's here, bunch of tech people from Chicago, that billionaire woman who's funding the new community center. Just another Thursday for us though, right?" Gabe forced a smile. "Tips might be decent, if we're lucky." They lined up for tray inspection. Barry walked the line like a drill sergeant, adjusting postures, checking that shoes were polished, hair was neat. Gabe's hands stayed steady. As he lifted the practice tray, years of military training still lived in his muscle memory. The service elevator rose toward the ballroom level. Through the doors, Gabe heard laughter, the clink of glasses, conversations about market futures and vacation homes. His grip tightened on the wine tray. 15 glasses of Cabernet, each worth more than what he made in an hour. The elevator doors opened. Crystal chandeliers transformed the ballroom into something from a fairy tale. Women floated past in gowns that shimmered like lake water under moonlight. Men in tailored tuxedos clustered near the bar, their voices carrying the confidence of people who'd never worried about making rent. Gabe stepped into the crowd, tray balanced on his palm, and began the delicate dance of service, present but invisible, essential but unseen. The glasses trembled slightly as he wove between the guests, their conversations washing over him in waves. The ballroom hummed with the particular energy of wealth at rest. Near the auction display, Marshal Pike commanded his usual circle, silver hair catching the light as he gestured through another story about development opportunities along the waterfront. His laugh boomed across the space, drawing smaller laughs from those hoping to catch his favor. "The key is vision," Pike said, swirling his whiskey. "Most people see rundown buildings. I see potential. That whole stretch near the old cannery? 5 years from now, luxury condos." Gabe navigated past with his tray, catching fragments of conversation. A city councilman nodded eagerly at Pike's words. The bank president's wife touched Pike's arm when she laughed. Power attracted power like magnets finding their match. A shift in the room's energy made everyone turn toward the main entrance. Evelyn Hart had arrived. She moved without hurry, but something about her presence pulled focus. The white suit was simple, elegant, no jewelry except small pearl earrings. Her natural hair formed a soft crown, and when she smiled at the doorman who took her coat, it reached her eyes. She looked like someone who'd learned to carry authority without wielding it like a weapon. Conversations quieted, then resumed at a lower pitch. Even Pike paused mid-sentence to track her movement across the room. The mayor broke from his group to greet her. The hospital board president straightened his tie. Gabe adjusted his route to avoid the growing cluster around her. Station 3 needed wine service. He loaded 15 glasses of Cabernet, each one filled to the exact same level muscle memory from hundreds of similar nights. The tray balanced perfectly on his palm as he stepped back into the flow of bodies. "Behind you," someone said. Gabe shifted left. Another server, Marcus, rushed past carrying a tray of empty appetizer plates. His elbow caught Gabe's shoulder, not hard, but enough. Time stretched like pulled taffy. The tray tilted. Wine glasses slid. Gabe's free hand shot out to steady them, but physics had already taken over. Dark red liquid arced through the air in a graceful, terrible curve. It splashed across white fabric with the sound of rain on canvas. The entire ballroom stopped breathing. Evelyn Hart stood frozen, Cabernet spreading across her suit jacket like spilled blood. Drops fell from her sleeve onto the carpet. A woman behind her pressed fingers to her mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." The tray slipped from Gabe's numb fingers, hitting the carpet with a muffled crash. Glasses rolled. More wine spread in dark rivers across the floor. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out as Gabe grabbed napkins from a nearby table. "Please, let me, I'll pay for the cleaning. I'll PR." His hand shook as he reached toward her, then pulled back, unsure whether touching her would make things worse. Heat flooded his face. Behind him, he heard Barry's footsteps approaching fast, could already imagine the fury in his manager's eyes. This job was gone. The rent money, Sophia's lessons, everything. Evelyn caught his hands. Her grip was warm, steady. She held his trembling fingers between her palms and looked directly into his eyes. The room around them blurred. "Don't panic." Her voice carried a strange note, something between wonder and certainty. "I've been looking for you for years, Mr. Alvarez." The words didn't make sense. Gabe's mouth opened but no sound came out. How did she know his name? They'd never met. He would remember meeting someone like her, wouldn't he? His knees buckled slightly. The remainder of the tray, the part he'd still been clutching, slipped from his nerveless fingers and clattered to the carpet. "Ma'am, I'm terribly sorry about this." Barry had arrived, face flushed, already reaching for his phone. "We'll have this cleaned immediately. Obviously, we'll cover any damages, and it's fine." Evelyn didn't look away from Gabe's face. "Truly, accidents happen. But your suit is just fabric." She finally released Gabe's hands and turned to the watching crowd with a smile that somehow made the whole situation feel less catastrophic. "Well, I always did think this outfit needed more color." Nervous laughter rippled through the guests. The woman who'd gasped earlier offered her shawl. Someone else produced a handful of cocktail napkins. The tension in the room shifted, loosened, began to dissipate. But Gabe remained frozen, staring at Evelyn Hart's face. She knew his name. She'd been looking for him. The words cycled through his mind without finding purchase, like trying to grab smoke. "Mr. Alvarez." Barry's voice came from very far away. "Why don't you take a moment in the back? Marcus can cover your stations." Evelyn touched Gabe's arm gently. "Actually, I'd like him to stay, if that's all right. We have something to discuss." Barry's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Around them, the party began to resume its rhythm, though plenty of eyes still tracked their direction. Gabe found his voice, though it came out rough. "How do you know who I am?" Evelyn glanced at the clusters of guests, pretending not to watch them. "Not here. Come with me." She led him through a side door into one of the hotel's quieter corridors. The sounds of the gala faded to a distant hum. Crystal sconces cast soft light on burgundy wallpaper. Evelyn leaned against the wall, wine still dripping occasionally from her sleeve. "5 years ago my husband James was dying." The words came out simple, matter of fact, but Gabe caught the tightness around her eyes. "Pancreatic cancer. We tried everything, best doctors, experimental treatments. Nothing worked." Gabe waited, unsure why she was telling him this. He spent his last months at St. Mary's Hospital. The nights were the worst for him. Pain, fear, loneliness, even when I was right there holding his hand. She paused, studying Gabe's face. "But he told me about someone who made those nights bearable. A man who worked the late shift, who'd sit with him when the pain kept him awake. Who'd pray with him when he asked, or just talk about ordinary things when he needed distraction." A memory surfaced slowly, like something rising from deep water. St. Mary's. Gabe had picked up shifts there between his main job and weekend catering gigs. The cancer ward. He'd delivered meals, changed water pitchers, done whatever needed doing. "There was a patient," Gabe said slowly. "Room 314. Never knew his last name, just James." "That was him." Evelyn's voice caught slightly. "He talked about you constantly those final weeks. Called you his midnight angel. Said you reminded him that kindness still existed, even in the darkest places." Gabe remembered now. The thin man with gentle eyes who'd asked him once, hesitant, if maybe he could stay for a prayer. Gabe had sat on the uncomfortable visitor's chair and held the man's cold hand while they talked to God together. It became a routine on the nights when James couldn't sleep, sometimes prayer, sometimes just conversation about Sophia's school plays or the Cubs' chances that season. "I never knew he was." Gabe gestured vaguely at Evelyn's designer suit, the diamond earrings. "Wealthy?" She smiled. "He wouldn't have wanted you to know." James believed real connections happened when people met soul to soul, not wallet to wallet. I was just doing my job. No. The word came out firm. You were being human when my husband needed humanity most. After he died, I tried to find you. All I had was Gabe and a vague description. The hospital's privacy rules meant they couldn't tell me anything. Gabe rubbed his face, still processing. All those nights, bringing James ice chips, adjusting his pillows, listening to stories about the logistics company he'd built from nothing. He'd had no idea he was comforting a millionaire. Not that it would have mattered. When I saw your name tag tonight. Evelyn shook her head. Gabriel Alvarez. The age was right, the face familiar from James's description. Then you dropped that tray, and I saw your hands shake exactly the way James described, gentle hands that trembled with care, he called them. Silence stretched between them. Through the door, muffled applause indicated someone was speaking. Listen, Evelyn said, straightening. I'm launching something next month. The Heart Home Community Kitchen. It's not charity, it's a training program and business. Veterans learning culinary skills while serving the community. I need someone to help coordinate it. Someone who understands service in all its forms. Ma'am, I'm just a waiter. You're a veteran who knows how to serve with dignity. James saw that. I see it. She pulled a card from her jacket pocket, miraculously dry despite the wine disaster. The position pays $60,000 a year to start. Full benefits. Gabe stared at the card without taking it. $60,000? That was more than he made in 2 years. I can't, this is too much. It's not charity, Mr. Alvarez. I need someone qualified. You've managed logistics in the Army, you understand food service, and most importantly, you know how to treat people with respect regardless of their circumstances. She pressed the card into his hand. Think about it. Before Gabe could respond, she opened the door back to the ballroom. Come on, I need to give my speech, and you're going to stand right where everyone can see you. What? No, I should get back to the kitchen. But Evelyn was already walking, and somehow Gabe found himself following. The crowd parted as they approached the small stage. Marshal Pike watched from his table, eyebrow raised. Barry stood frozen by the service station. Evelyn took the microphone. The room quieted. Good evening, everyone. First, let me address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the Cabernet on the suit. Light laughter. Tonight's little accident introduced me to someone I've been searching for. Gabriel Alvarez here. She gestured to where Gabe stood, wishing the floor would swallow him, showed extraordinary kindness to my late husband during his final months. He didn't know who James was, didn't know there might be any reward. He simply saw a human being who needed comfort and provided it. Faces turned toward Gabe, some surprised, others calculating. Pike's expression remained unreadable. This is the spirit we need more of in Harbor View, Evelyn continued. People who serve others not for recognition, but because it's right. That's what the Heart Home Kitchen will represent: dignity, service, or community. The speech continued, but Gabe barely heard it. His legs felt weak. When it finally ended and the applause died down, he slipped back toward the service area. Barry intercepted him. Take the rest of the night off, his manager said quietly. Marcus will cover. Gabe nodded, grabbed his jacket, and escaped through the employee exit. The cool night air hit his flushed face like a blessing. The walk home felt surreal. Street lamps blurred past. The business card in his pocket seemed to pulse with possibility. $60,000 a year. Benefits? Sophia could take all the lessons she wanted. They could move to a better apartment. Maybe even save for college. When he opened the apartment door, Sophia was still awake, practicing fingering on her violin, without the bow to keep quiet. Dad, you're early? Did something happen? Gabe sat on the couch, still processing. Yeah, baby. Something good may finally be happening. The next evening arrived too quickly. Gabe adjusted his tie in the employee bathroom mirror, still wearing yesterday's uniform. No point going home just to come back. The hotel had called all gala staff for a debrief, standard procedure after major events. The lobby buzzed with post-event energy. Maintenance crews dismantled displays while accountants tallied donation pledges in the corner. Luz Mendez worked near the marble pillars, her movements efficient but tired. Her 7-year-old, Mateo, sat cross-legged by the concierge desk, tongue poking out as he colored. "Sorry about him," Luz said when Gabe passed. "Babysitter canceled." "No worries. Kid's got talent." Gabe nodded at the drawing surprisingly detailed birds in flight. Barry's voice crackled over the intercom, calling staff to the Oak Room. Gabe started that direction when the main doors swept open. Marshall Pike strode in, phone pressed to his ear, every inch the millionaire donor. His Italian leather shoes clicked against marble, the kind of shoes that cost more than Gabe's monthly rent. "Tell them I want the rezoning passed by Monday," Pike barked into his phone. "I don't care about the community board's concerns." Luz grabbed her supplies, pulling Mateo up. "Come on, mijo, we need to move." But Mateo had already spotted Pike. The boy tilted his head, studying the silver-haired man with that unfiltered intensity only children possessed. Before Luz could stop him, he walked straight over, crayon still in hand. Pike ended his call, noticed the child, and stepped sideways. Too late. Mateo looked up at him with huge brown eyes. Then, in a voice clear as church bells, he whispered, "Mommy says you're my daddy." The lobby froze. Pike's face drained of color, then flushed red. Luz dropped her cleaning rag, the wet slap echoing off marble. "Mateo, no." She rushed forward, grabbed his shoulders. "I'm sorry, mister." "Pike, he doesn't. Children say things." "Get this kid away from me." Pike's voice could have cut glass. "Please, he's confused." "Confused?" Pike stepped toward her, and Luz shrank back. "Your brat accosts me with lies and you call it confusion?" Gabe moved without thinking, placing himself between Pike and the Mendez family. "Sir, he's just a kid. Stay out of this, waiter." "Can't do that." Pike's eyes narrowed. "You're that veteran from last night. Evelyn's little charity case. You want to keep whatever job she promised you? Mind your business. Threatening people is my business to stop." The Oak Room door opened. Barry stuck his head out, saw the scene, and retreated. Coward. Luz pulled Mateo behind Gabe, tears streaming. "Mr. Pike, please, we'll go. We'll leave right now." "You'll do more than leave." Pike pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Dawkins. You're finished here. And when I'm done, you won't work anywhere in this state." "You can't," Luz's voice cracked. "Watch me. I donate $500,000 annually to this hotel's preservation fund. You think they'll choose a lying maid over me?" The main doors opened again. Evelyn Hart walked in, wearing jeans and a Harvard sweatshirt, car keys jangling. She stopped, taking in the tableau. Pike, with his phone raised like a weapon, Luz crying, Mateo clutching his mother's leg, and Gabe standing guard. "Everything all right here?" Her tone was conversational, but her eyes were sharp. Pike straightened his tie. "Evelyn, just handling a small personnel issue. This woman's child made wild accusations. Completely inappropriate." Evelyn looked at Luz, who was trying to disappear into herself. Then at Mateo, whose drawing had fallen, birds scattered across marble. "What did he say?" "It doesn't matter what," I asked the child's mother. Evelyn's voice could have frozen hell. "Ms. Mendez," Luz whispered. "Ms. Mendez, what did your son say?" Luz's mouth opened and closed. Mateo, with that fearless honesty, answered for her, "That he's my daddy. Mommy told me when I asked why I looked different from my cousins." Evelyn's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her stance. "I see." "You see nothing," Pike snapped. "This is extortion, slander. I'll have my lawyer's Marshall." Just his first name, but it landed like a judge's gavel. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere private." "There's nothing to discuss." "No?" Evelyn picked up Mateo's drawing, smoothing the wrinkled paper. "Because from where I'm standing, a child made a statement, and instead of simply denying it, you're threatening his mother's livelihood. That seems excessive for a false accusation." Pike's jaw clenched. I don't have to explain myself to you. No, you don't. But you might have to explain to the Herald why you're terrorizing a 7-year-old and his mother. You wouldn't dare. Try me." They stared at each other. The lobby felt airless. Finally, Pike lowered his phone. "This isn't over." He looked at Luz with undisguised contempt. "You've made a serious mistake." He stormed toward the exit, paused at the door. "I'll take care of this mess. Count on it." The door slammed behind him. Luz's legs gave out. She sank onto the marble, pulling Mateo close, sobbing into his hair. "What have I done? What have I done?" Gabe knelt beside her. "You didn't do anything wrong." Evelyn crouched too, offering a tissue from her pocket. "Ms. Mendez, I think we need to talk." Through tears, Luz looked between them. "He'll destroy us. You don't know what he's capable of." "Actually," Evelyn said quietly, "I'm starting to get a pretty good idea." She helped Luz stand, then looked at Gabe. Their eyes met and held. In that moment, he saw her process what she'd witnessed, calculating implications and consequences. Everything had changed. They both knew it. The comfortable fundraiser alliance between Evelyn and Pike, dead, Luz's job hanging by a thread, and whatever Marshall meant by taking care of this mess. Gabe picked up Mateo's crayons, scattered like evidence across the floor. Evelyn's Lincoln Navigator smelled like leather and vanilla air freshener. Luz sat in back with Mateo asleep against her shoulder while Gabe rode shotgun, watching the harbor lights blur past. "He wasn't always like this," Luz said into the silence. "Marshall, at first, he was kind." Evelyn's hands tightened on the wheel. "When?" 7 years ago. I'd just arrived. My English was broken, my work permit barely processed. The hotel hired me for overnight shifts. Nobody wanted them." Luz stroked Mateo's hair. "Marshall would come by after his late dinners. Said I reminded him of someone." Gabe turned to look at her. In the passing streetlights, tears tracked down her face. "One night, immigration raided the kitchen. 3 people were taken. I hid in a supply closet for hours, terrified. Marshall found me." Her voice dropped. "Said he could protect me, make sure my paperwork stayed clean. All I had to do was be grateful." "Jesus," Gabe muttered. "I said no at first, but he knew where I lived. Knew I sent money to my mother in Honduras. He never forced." She stopped, started again. "He never had to. The threat was enough. One phone call, Luz. That's all it takes." Evelyn pulled into Gabe's neighborhood, past the closed barber shop, the Guatemalan grocery. "How long?" she asked. 3 months. Then he got bored. Found someone younger at his country club. I thought I was free." Luz touched Mateo's sleeping face. "Until this one arrived 9 months later." "Did you ever report?" "To who?" "The police who work security at his fundraisers? The hotel manager who needed his donations?" Luz laughed, bitter. "I tried once. Went to the hospital for a DNA test. The nurse at the desk, she recognized Marshall's name. Called him directly. He showed up before they even drew blood." Gabe's fists clenched. "He threatened you at a hospital?" "Didn't need to. Just sat in the waiting room, reading a newspaper. I understood. I left." Evelyn pulled up to Gabe's apartment building. Through the lit window, they could see Sophia at the kitchen table, textbooks spread around her. "Ms. Mendez, Luz, I need you to hear something." Evelyn turned to face her. "Marshall Pike will not bury this truth. I don't care how much money he has or how many people he owns. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Men like Marshall count on silence. They build empires on it." Evelyn's voice carried steel. "But I've dismantled bigger empires than his. He funds half the town's charity work," Luz whispered. "The hospital wing, the youth center, your foundation's local partners. Then the town will have to decide what matters more, his money or their souls." Gabe walked around to help Luz with Mateo, lifting the sleeping boy gently. The child stirred, mumbled something about birds, settled against Gabe's shoulder. They climbed the narrow stairs. Luz's apartment was 2 doors down from Gabe's, A studio barely bigger than Evelyn's walk-in closet probably was. She fumbled for keys. "I'll help you," Gabe said. "Whatever you need, legal help, protection. You have Sophia to think about." Sophia would never forgive me for looking away. Luz's door opened. The apartment was spotless but sparse, a single bed they clearly shared, Mateo's drawings taped to every wall, a photo of an older woman on a small altar with candles. Gabe laid Mateo on the bed. The boy curled into the pillow, still clutching his crayon. "Thank you," Luz whispered. Back in the hallway, Evelyn handed her a business card. "My personal cell, any hour. And Luz? Start documenting everything. Every interaction, every threat. Write it all down." Inside Gabe's apartment, Sophia looked up from her homework. "Dad? Ms. Hart? Is everything okay?" She was too smart to miss the tension, the way her father's jaw was set. "There's a situation," Gabe admitted, sitting beside her. "Someone powerful did something wrong. We're trying to help make it right." "Marshall Pike?" Sophia wasn't asking. "I heard his name through the window." Evelyn leaned against the kitchen counter. "Your father stood up for someone tonight. It might cause problems." Sophia looked at Gabe. "Like when you testified about that contractor in Afghanistan? The one stealing supplies? Similar. You got death threats then. This is different, mija." "Is it?" Sophia's 15-year-old wisdom showed. "Rich people can destroy you without touching you. Everyone knows that." "So, we do nothing?" Gabe asked. "Let him hurt Luz? Abandon Mateo?" Sophia was quiet then. "Mom would have helped them." The words hung there. Evelyn watched father and daughter, seeing their bond, their shared grief worn smooth by years. "Sometimes the truth costs something," Gabe said finally. "But we never regret standing for it. That's what makes us who we are." Sophia nodded, closed her textbook. "I have my audition next week. If Mr. Pike tries to ruin us, will I still get to go? Over my dead body will he touch your dreams?" Sophia hugged him, then surprised Evelyn by hugging her too. "Thank you for backing my dad." After Sophia went to bed, Gabe walked Evelyn to her car. "This will get ugly," she warned. "Already is. I mean legally, publicly. Marshall won't go quietly. Will your board support you?" She was quiet too long. "We'll see." They stood by her navigator. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Evelyn looked up, her lips moving silently. "Praying?" Gabe asked. "My husband taught me that." She smiled, sad, said courage isn't the absence of fear. It's fear that said its prayers. She whispered something Gabe couldn't hear, then louder, "Lord, grant us courage for tomorrow." "Amen," Gabe added. She drove away. Gabe stood on the sidewalk, looking up at Luz's dark window, then his own where Sophia slept. War was coming. But this time, he wouldn't face it alone. The morning rush at Harborview Hotel moved like molasses. Gabe noticed it the moment he clocked in, conversations dying when he passed, eyes sliding away from his. "Heard you played hero last night," Marcus said, not looking up from the silverware he was polishing. 20 years they'd worked together, and now Marcus couldn't meet his eyes. "Just helped a coworker." That's not how Mr. Pike tells it. The prep kitchen fell silent. Even the dishwasher seemed to run quieter. "Since when do we let rich men write our stories?" Gabe asked. "Since they sign our paychecks," someone muttered. Rosa, who'd trained Gabe his first week, touched his arm. "We know Luz. Know she's good people. But Pike owns 3 hotels in the state. His lawyer plays golf with the labor board commissioner. So we survive." Rosa's voice was tired. "Like we always do. Mr. Dawkins appeared in the doorway. "Alvarez. My office." The walk felt like a funeral procession. Staff watched from doorways, some with pity, others with relief it wasn't them. Dawkins closed the door, gestured to a chair. His office smelled of old coffee and older disappointments. 30 years I've managed this place," he began, staring at a photo of the hotel's grand opening. "Seen scandals come and go. But Marshall Pike. Just say it. The board called this morning. They're concerned about staff conduct during events, particularly staff who insert themselves into donor relations. I protected Luz from harassment. You interfered with a major benefactor. Dawkins pulled off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. Gabe, I like you. You're reliable, decent. But Pike wants blood. The board wants peace. And you? I want to retire with my pension intact. He sighed. I'm not firing you yet, but watch yourself. Pike's got lawyers who eat people like us for appetizers. An hour later, Evelyn picked Gabe up in a Toyota Camry instead of her Navigator. Trying to blend in, she explained, navigating toward the warehouse district. Marshall's already spinning stories. The mysterious billionaire corrupting honest workers. They parked outside a brick building with good bones and broken windows. The future, Hart Home Community Kitchen. Inside, pigeons scattered. Sunlight streamed through gaps in the roof, illuminating dust motes and possibility. Commercial kitchen there, Evelyn pointed. Training stations along that wall. Dining space for 200. Not charity, dignity. Veterans cooking for their community, earning real wages. Gabe touched a support beam, solid despite decades of neglect. Like resurrection. Exactly, she smiled. My husband would have loved this. He always said empty buildings were just waiting for purpose. They walked the space, Evelyn explaining ventilation needs, permit requirements, her timeline, 6 months to opening, if everything went smooth. Will it? Go smooth? Depends if I still have funding after this week. They found a corner diner, one of those places with cracked vinyl seats and perfect coffee. The waitress, ancient and efficient, didn't blink at the billionaire ordering eggs and toast. You're scared, Evelyn observed, terrified. Sophia needs stability. I can't give her that if Pike destroys me. Fear's reasonable, paralysis isn't. She stirred sugar into her coffee. You know what I was before the money? A waitress. Graveyard shift at a truck stop. Pregnant, abandoned, counting tips to buy formula. Gabe looked at her, really looked. Beneath the polish was steel. A regular old trucker named Eugene used to leave $100 tips, said I reminded him of his daughter. One night, he had a heart attack in the parking lot. I did CPR until the ambulance came. She smiled. Eugene survived. Turned out he owned a logistics empire. Made me his protege. Changed everything. Random kindness. Nothing random about kindness. It's the most deliberate thing we do. Across town, Luz sat in Marshall Pike's Mercedes, her hands folded to hide their shaking. 50,000, Marshall said. Cash. Today. You and the boy disappear. He has a name. Mateo, your son. Marshall's face darkened. He's nothing to me. A mistake from a weak moment. I was 19, new to the country. You said you'd have me deported if I didn't. Ancient history. Take the money, leave town. Everybody wins. What about Mateo? He deserves not to grow up in scandal. Think about it. His classmates, Googling his name, finding court documents. Ugliness. That what you want? Luz stared out the window. A mother pushed a stroller past, cooing to her baby. 100,000, she said. Excuse me? For 7 years of silence, for the nights I couldn't sleep, for explaining to my son why he has no father. 100,000. You're in no position to negotiate. Neither are you. She met his eyes. Ms. Hart has lawyers too. Good ones. Marshall's hand moved toward his jacket for a moment. Luz thought weapon, but he pulled out a phone. My lawyer will draw up papers. Non-disclosure agreement. You violate it, you lose everything and face deportation. I'm a legal resident now. We'll see about that. She left the car on shaking legs. Only when Marshall drove away did she vomit into a trash can. That evening, Gabe made Sophia's favorite rice and beans with the good sausage, the one they saved for celebrations. What are we celebrating? She asked, suspicious. Possibility. Ms. Hart officially offered me the coordinator position at the community kitchen. Sophia dropped her fork. Dad, that's huge. Training veterans, managing operations, real salary, benefits, if it works out. It will. She hugged him fierce. Mom would be so proud. The phone rang at 11:47. Gabe grabbed it before it could wake Sophia. It's bad, Evelyn said without preamble. Marshall's lawyers sent a cease and desist, says I'm interfering with his business relationships, damaging his reputation. They're threatening a defamation suit. Against you? Against all of us. You, me, Luz. Claims we're running an extortion scheme. Gabe sank into his father's old armchair, the one that creaked with memory. What do? We fight. But Gabe, it'll get worse before it gets better. He's got judges who owe him favors, reporters on speed dial. You sure you want this? Through Sophia's door, he could hear her gentle snoring. Down the hall, Luz was probably lying awake, deciding whether to take the money and run. I'm sure, he said. After hanging up, Gabe sat in darkness. Outside, a siren wailed. Someone's emergency, someone's tragedy. Tomorrow, the war would escalate. But tonight, his daughter slept safe. For now, that was enough. Morning broke gray over Harborview, the kind of dawn that promised rain but couldn't commit. Gabe found Sophia hunched over her phone at the breakfast table, cereal going soggy in her bowl. Dad, they're saying terrible things. The blog post glowed on her screen. Gold digging made Target's respected developer. The comments underneath were worse, ugly speculation about Luz's immigration status, her morals, whether the kid was even Marshall's. Is it true? About Mr. Pike and that little boy? Gabe poured coffee, choosing words careful as eggs. Sometimes powerful people hurt vulnerable ones. And sometimes the vulnerable find courage to speak up. But everyone's calling her a liar. Everyone called your mother dramatic when she first reported symptoms. 3 doctors dismissed her concerns. She kept pushing until someone listened. He touched Sophia's shoulder. Truth doesn't become false just because people deny it. Will this hurt your new job? Maybe, probably. Then why? Because Mateo deserves better than shame. And Luz deserves better than silence. At the Harborview Hotel, the morning shift gathered in defensive clusters. By the coffee station, 2 housekeepers argued in rapid Spanish while a bellhop translated fragments for the curious valets. She should have taken his money and left. Easy to say when it's not your son being denied. Marshall Pike donated new equipment to the Children's Hospital last year. So, good deeds don't erase bad ones. Mr. Dawkins moved through the lobby like a man navigating a minefield. His morning rounds, usually efficient, stretched as staff cornered him with questions. Was Luz fired? Was Marshall pulling his convention bookings? Were layoffs coming? Business as usual? He repeated, fooling no one. Luz arrived for her shift through the service entrance, spine straight despite the whispers trailing her. She'd left Mateo with her neighbor, unable to explain why school wasn't safe today. In the supply closet, she found a note taped to her cart. We believe you. No signature. But she recognized the handwriting Maria from laundry, whose own daughter had been harassed by a supervisor years ago. Across town, at the skeleton of the future community kitchen, Pastor Ruth picked her way through construction debris. She found Evelyn standing amid exposed beams and possibility, studying blueprints. Came to bless the foundation, Ruth said. Seems you need it more than the building. Marshall's threatening to pull every donor who matters, the Harpers, the Brennans, even the Catholic diocese. Says I'm enabling a shakedown. And I've been poor. I've been powerless. I won't stand by while he crushes Luz for speaking truth. Ruth laid weathered hands on a support beam. Lord, let this place be built on justice. Let it feed bodies and souls. Let courage rise like bread in the oven. Amen, Evelyn whispered. There's more you should know, Ruth continued. I counseled a young woman 8 years ago. Different name, same story about Marshall. She left town rather than fight. Would she testify? I'll ask. But Evelyn, this pattern, it's not just Luz. Evening fell like a curtain. The church basement smelled of decades-old coffee, older prayers. Fluorescent lights hummed over folding chairs arranged in a circle. Evelyn arrived first, followed by Gabe, then Pastor Ruth. Luz came last, Mateo's drawing clutched in her hand, a crayon family with a question mark where the father should be. I need to tell it all, Luz began. So you understand. She spoke for 40 minutes, about arriving from Honduras at 18. The restaurant job that fell through. Desperation that led her to the hotel. Marshall's initial kindness, references to his immigrant grandmother, promises to help with paperwork. The first time, he said it would help my application. Said he had connections at immigration. I was so scared of being sent back. Gabe's fists clenched. Evelyn took notes. Ruth prayed silently. After, he'd give me envelopes. Cash. Called it bonuses. I knew what it was. Payment for silence. But I needed the money. My mother back home, she was sick. How long? Evelyn asked gently. 4 months. Then I found out about Mateo. I tried to tell Marshall, but he said I was lying, that I'd been with others. Had his security escort me out. Mr. Dawkins gave me my job back, but in housekeeping. Away from the restaurant, away from Marshall. Dawkins knew, suspected, never asked directly. I think he felt guilty but not enough to risk his position. The basement's boiler kicked on, rattling pipes like old bones. Why now? Ruth asked. Why let Mateo speak? Because he started asking real questions. Why don't I have a daddy? Why do other kids have 2 parents? I've been lying to my son to protect a man who denies he exists. Tears came fast. I'm tired of lies eating me alive. Evelyn reached across the circle, took Luz's hands. We're going to need documentation, text messages, those envelopes if you kept them, any witnesses to his behavior. Maria from laundry saw him corner me once. And there's... Luz hesitated. There's a video. Security footage. From that first time. I made a copy before they cycled the drives. Gabe's head snapped up. You have proof? Hidden. I was too scared to use it. But now we build a case, Evelyn said. Legal, airtight, public if necessary. He'll destroy us, Luz whispered. He'll try. Evelyn's voice carried steel, wrapped in velvet. But bullies rely on isolation. You're not alone anymore. Ruth began a prayer. Gabe joined, then Luz. Evelyn, not typically religious, found herself mouthing words she hadn't spoken since her husband's funeral. Above them, the church sanctuary sat empty, but the basement held something holy, truth being born through pain into light. We won't let you face this alone, Evelyn promised. Outside, rain finally came. 2 days later, Marshall Pike's retaliation arrived like a precision strike. Evelyn's phone buzzed during her morning run along the harbor. 3 board members, then 5, then 7, all with variations of the same message. Marshall's called an emergency meeting, David Harper's text read. You need to distance yourself from this mess, Evelyn. The foundation can't afford this scandal. By noon, she sat in the Harborview Hotel's oak-paneled conference room facing her advisory board. Marshall had orchestrated perfectly. He wasn't present, but his influence filled every corner. 60 million in pledges are at risk, Jennifer Brennan said, sliding papers across the mahogany table. The Brennan Trust, the Pike Foundation, the Harbor Catholic Fund, all contingent on maintaining organizational integrity. Integrity, Evelyn repeated. That's what he's calling it? He's calling it protecting the foundation from a shakedown. This made, her allegations, her name is Luz. They're unsubstantiated. Meanwhile, you're jeopardizing everything we've built. David Harper, usually her ally, wouldn't meet her eyes. We're not asking you to abandon anyone, just create distance. Focus on the kitchen project. Let the legal system handle personal matters. The legal system Marshall helps fund through campaign contributions. Silence stretched like pulled taffy. We need your decision by week's end, Jennifer said. Across town, Mr. Dawkins intercepted Gabe at the service entrance. We need to talk. The hotel manager's face carried the weight of bad news. Marshall's been calling board members. Says you intimidated him, created a hostile environment during the gala follow-up. I stood between him and a mother with her child. I know what you did. I also know what Marshall can do. He owns 14% of this hotel's parent company. Gabe adjusted his bow tie, fingers steady despite the storm building in his chest. Are you firing me? Not yet. But I'm being pressured. Document everything, every shift, every interaction. Build your own case. I've been documenting my whole life, Mr. Dawkins. It's how people like me survive people like him. The evening shift passed in a blur of forced smiles and perfect service. Gabe balanced trays, poured wine, cleared plates, all while his mind churned. Table 12 complained about the salmon. Table 5 wanted a wine he'd recommended last month, remembered by name. Small victories in a war he wasn't sure he could win. During break, his phone showed 3 missed calls from Sophia's school. At Harborview Middle School, Sophia had endured whispers all day. In the bathroom between classes, she'd overheard Brittany Pike Marshall's niece telling a cluster of girls that Sophia's dad is trying to sue my uncle for money. My mom says they're opportunists. That's not true, Sophia had said, voice shaking. Then why is your dad suddenly friends with that billionaire? Why is he causing drama at the hotel? The words followed Sophia through algebra, through history, through orchestra practice, where even her violin felt heavy in her hands. By final bell, she fled to the library rather than face the bus ride home. When Gabe finally reached her, she was sitting on their front steps, backpack clutched like armor. Dad, what's really happening? He sat beside her, still in his server's uniform. Someone powerful hurt someone vulnerable. We're trying to help. But everyone's saying, people often mock what they don't understand, or what scares them. Truth scares bullies more than anything. Are we going to be okay? We're going to be right. Sometimes that's better than okay. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Luz faced her own interrogation. HR had summoned her to a windowless office where 2 senior managers and a lawyer she didn't recognize waited with coffee she didn't trust. We're concerned about recent events, the lawyer began. Your interactions with Mr. Pike have created liability issues. My son spoke to him. Children speak. Your son made an accusation, in public. During a foundation event, he asked a question. Ms. Mendez, we're prepared to offer a generous severance package, 6 months' pay, glowing references, assistance finding new employment. The number they pushed across the desk could cover Mateo's school for 2 years, could fix her mother's roof in Honduras, could buy silence shaped like security. No. Consider carefully. This offer expires when you leave this room. Her hands trembled, but her voice held firm. No. That evening, Evelyn appeared at Gabe's door with 3 bags of Chinese takeout and eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Figured you might not feel like cooking. Sophia set the table while Evelyn unpacked containers, lo mein, orange chicken, spring rolls enough for 6, though they were only 3. You didn't have to, Gabe began. I wanted to. Needed to, really. My house feels too big tonight. Over paper plates and soy sauce packets, Evelyn finally spoke about James, how he'd built his first warehouse with borrowed money and determination, how he'd treated every worker like family, knew their children's names, their struggles, their dreams. The chemo was destroying him. Not just physically, his spirit was breaking. Then this waiter appeared. Night shifts, always. Would sit with James when I couldn't be there, when board meetings or foundation galas pulled me away. Gabe remembered those nights. The expensive room that felt like any other hospital room at 3 a.m. The man who'd wanted to talk about everything except his disease. He never mentioned money. Just baseball, his grandkids, whether heaven had good coffee. I never knew his name. He said his name was just James, insisted I call him that. That was him. Hated pretense. Sophia quietly retrieved her violin. Without asking, she began to play something soft and climbing, a melody that seemed to hold all their grief and all their hope. Evelyn's eyes filled. The music said what words couldn't. The next morning came too soon. Gabe had barely slept, his mind replaying Evelyn's words about her husband, Sophia's haunting melody, the weight of connections he was only beginning to understand. His phone rang at 7 sharp. "Can you come to my office?" Evelyn's voice sounded strange, not worried, but shaken. "There's something you need to see." The Hart Foundation offices occupied the top floor of a renovated warehouse downtown. Gabe had never been there, had imagined something sterile and corporate. Instead, he found exposed brick, plants everywhere, photos of community projects covering entire walls. Evelyn stood by her desk, holding a manila envelope like it might shatter. "I've been going through James's papers, things I couldn't face before." She gestured to boxes stacked against the window. "Found this in a file marked Private Foundations. You should sit down." Gabe took the chair across from her desk. Evelyn handed him the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, the careful architecture of charity, the James Hart Memorial Fund, established 8 years ago. Anonymous disbursements to families in crisis. Medical bills, funeral expenses, emergency housing. Then, Gabe saw it. Recipient: Sophia Maria Alvarez, pediatric cardiac surgery, Harborview General. Amount: 47,000. The date jumped out 6 years ago, the worst time of his life. "No," the word came out strangled. "This can't. It's real. I called the hospital, verified everything." Gabe's hands shook. 6 years ago, Sophia had needed surgery for a congenital heart defect discovered late. The VA coverage had gaps, bureaucratic nightmares, delays that could have killed her. Then suddenly, miraculously, an anonymous donor had covered everything. The billing department called it a blessing. Gabe had called it a miracle he didn't deserve but desperately needed. "Your husband did this? Look at the date." 3 weeks after Gabe had started his night shifts at the hospital. 3 weeks after he'd first sat with a sleepless patient named James, who wanted to talk about anything but cancer, he wrote about you. Evelyn pulled out a leather journal, James's handwriting still bold, despite his weakness. "The waiter who prays, doesn't know I have money, doesn't care, just sits with me. His daughter's sick," he mentioned it once, then apologized for burdening me. Burdening me, as if his worry could compare to my self-pity. Tears ran down Gabe's face. He didn't bother wiping them. "I can't heal myself," Evelyn continued reading, "but maybe I can heal his fear. One father to another. Let this be my prayer in action." The room spun. All those nights bringing James coffee, talking about Sophia's love of music, never mentioning the mounting bills, the terror that he'd lose her. "He saved her life. You saved his spirit first. I just sat with him. You saw him as human. Do you know how rare that became once the cancer spread? Everyone saw him as either tragedy or opportunity. You just saw James." Gabe stood, walked to the window. The harbor stretched gray and endless. Somewhere out there, fishing boats worked their nets, unaware of miracles circling back through time. "It feels like," Evelyn paused, choosing words carefully, "like Providence, like God's own economy where nothing good is ever lost. Your husband's kindness saved my daughter. And you're still, even with Marshall threatening everything, you're still fighting for Luz and Mateo. How could I not? James would never forgive me if I let power silence truth. He'd say, love shows up." Exactly. That evening, Sophia was practicing violin when Gabe got home. He waited until she finished the piece, something triumphant he didn't recognize. "New composition?" "For the scholarship audition, if it still happens." "It will." He sat on the couch, patted the spot beside him. I need to tell you something about when you were 9. Sophia's face went careful. They rarely discussed her surgery, the before time when death had been a daily possibility. You remember being sick. I remember being scared you were scared. I was terrified. The bills were, I couldn't cover them. Then someone did. Anonymously. I never knew who. And now? Evelyn's husband. The man I used to sit with during my hospital shifts. He paid for everything. Sophia's eyes widened. The man you prayed with? I never knew he had money. He never knew my last name. But somehow, your surgery got paid for 3 weeks after we met. Dad, he died 2 years later, but his widow found us. Because of spilled wine at a gala where I was serving. Sophia stood, walked to the window where city lights made constellations. So, kindness never disappears. It just travels until it finds where it's needed. That's a beautiful way to see it. She turned, crossed the room, wrapped her arms around him. We were never alone, even when we thought we were. Later, after Sophia had gone to bed, Gabe stood in her doorway watching her sleep. 6 years ago, he'd stood in another doorway, watching machines keep her alive, begging God for a miracle he couldn't afford. The miracle had already been in motion, set in place by a dying man who'd received 3 hours of company from a tired waiter. Circles within circles, grace within grace. Tomorrow would bring more pressure from Marshall, more threats, more fear. But tonight, Gabe understood something fundamental. Their lives had been woven into Evelyn's long before wine ever touched white silk. Some things were bigger than coincidence. Some connections ran deeper than anyone could plan. The morning sun caught the new sign, Heart, Home Community Kitchen, letters gleaming against weathered brick. Inside, controlled chaos reigned. Veterans in crisp aprons moved between prep stations, knives flashing, pans sizzling. Behind you, called Tommy, a Marine who'd lost his leg in Kandahar, now navigating the tight space with practiced grace. Heard? Responded Maria, Navy cook turned civilian, plating roasted vegetables with architectural precision. Gabe checked the warming trays one more time. 3 months of planning, permits, and preparation had led to this moment. The pilot program launch would serve 200 of Harborview's hungry, no questions asked, no judgment passed. You're going to wear a hole in that floor. Evelyn appeared beside him, elegant, even in a simple volunteer apron. Just want everything perfect. It already is. Look around. She was right. The kitchen hummed with purpose. Veterans who'd struggled to find place or meaning after service now worked with military efficiency, softened by genuine joy. At the pass, Derek, former Army sergeant, 2 tours in Iraq, taught a younger vet how to garnish soup with fresh herbs. Presentation matters, Derek explained, shows respect for the person eating. The doors opened at 5 sharp. The town flooded in not just the needy, but curious neighbors, supportive locals, skeptics wanting to see what the fuss was about. The smell of rosemary chicken and fresh bread pulled them forward. Welcome, welcome. Evelyn greeted each person personally. No distinction between the woman in designer boots and the man whose shoes were held together with duct tape. Luz worked the coat check, quiet but steady. Mateo had made himself assistant greeter, offering hand-drawn menus to everyone who entered. I made the pictures, he announced proudly. That's supposed to be soup, but it looks like a cloud. Laughter rippled through the line. The town hadn't seen Mateo since the gala incident. His cheerful presence here, in defiance of Marshall's threats, felt like its own small revolution. At 6, the quartet began setting up. Sophia tuned her violin, hands surprisingly steady. She'd practiced this piece, What a Wonderful World, until her fingers could find every note in darkness. You ready, kiddo? Whispered James, the cellist from her school. My dad's watching. That's not pressure, that's power. The first notes floated across the dining room. Conversations quieted. Sophia stepped forward for her solo, and the melody transformed. What had been sweet became transcendent. She played like someone who'd walked through shadow and found light waiting. Gabe stopped ladling soup to listen. His daughter, creating beauty in a room full of people society often forgot. Her music said what words couldn't. Everyone here matters. Applause erupted when she finished. Sophia's glow could have powered the building. She found Gabe's eyes across the room, and he pressed his hand to his heart, their signal for, "I'm proud of you." "Your daughter's remarkable," Evelyn murmured, appearing at his station. "Gets it from her mother. I think her father might deserve some credit." They served side by side for the next hour. Evelyn, who could buy this building without checking her bank balance, dished out mashed potatoes with genuine pleasure. She knew people's names, asked about their families, remembered previous conversations. "Mrs. Chen, how's your grandson's asthma?" "Better, Miss Evelyn. That doctor you recommended worked miracles." This was Evelyn's gift-making connection seem effortless when Gabe knew it was anything but. He'd watched her study notes before events, memorizing details that mattered to people everyone else overlooked. Local reporters wove through the crowd, cameras clicking. One caught Gabe and Evelyn laughing over a child's joke about the soup being as green as Hulk's bathwater. The photo would run in tomorrow's paper, two people from different worlds, finding joy in service. "Mr. Alvarez," a reporter cornered him, "how does it feel to go from serving at galas to running this kitchen?" "I'm still serving. That hasn't changed. Just the setting. But surely this is more meaningful." Gabe glanced at Tommy, teaching a teenager how to hold a knife properly. At Maria, showing Sophia's quartet where to set up for better acoustics. At Luz, helping an elderly man with his coat while Mateo carried the man's plate to his table. Every act of service matters, whether it's wine at a gala or soup in a kitchen. It's all about seeing people. By 8 o'clock, they'd served everyone. The veterans began breaking down stations with practiced efficiency. The quartet packed up after 3 encores. Guests lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth. Evelyn clinked a spoon against a glass. The room quieted. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. This kitchen exists because our community believes in second chances, fresh starts, and the dignity of shared meals." She paused, found Gabe. "But mostly, it exists because of the vision and heart of our director, Gabriel Alvarez." The applause caught Gabe off guard. People he'd served at the hotel for years clapped with genuine enthusiasm. Veterans he'd trained with raised their ladles in salute. Sophia whistled through her fingers, unladylike and perfect. "Speech," someone called. Gabe shook his head, but Evelyn guided him forward. "I'm not good at speeches, but I know something about hunger, not just for food, but for purpose, respect. The chance to contribute." He looked at his team. "Every person wearing an apron tonight knows that hunger. And now we get to feed others. That's the real miracle." The crowd dispersed slowly. Gabe and Evelyn found themselves alone in the kitchen, washing the last dishes. "We did it," she said, barely above a whisper. "You did it. We." She flicked soap suds at him. "Accept the compliment, Alvarez." They laughed, tired, giddy, accomplished. In the soft light of the empty kitchen, something shifted between them. Not dramatic, just a recognition of possibility. Tomorrow would bring whatever tomorrow brought, but tonight they'd fed their community. Tonight they'd proven that Grace could wear an apron. The blog post went live at 6:47 a.m. By 7, it had 3,000 shares. Exclusive. Video shows charity kitchen director stealing at gala. Gabe stared at his phone screen, coffee growing cold in his hand. The footage was grainy but damning him near a guest's abandoned jacket, his hand moving toward the table, then away. Except he'd been clearing wine glasses, not stealing watches. The edit was seamless to untrained eyes. His phone buzzed. "Mr. Dawkins, can you come in? Immediately?" The walk to Harborview Hotel felt like marching to a firing squad. Staff members avoided his eyes. Jenny from housekeeping turned away when he waved. The lobby's marble floor echoed his footsteps like judgment. Dawkins waited in his office, face gray. "Gabe, I don't believe this garbage." Then why, the board called an emergency meeting at 5 this morning. Marshall Pike was on the line. Dawkins pushed a paper across the desk. I have to suspend you. Pending investigation. The words hit like physical blows. 14 years of perfect service, destroyed by pixels and lies. My shifts. I need those shifts. I'm sorry. My hands are tied. Gabe left through the service entrance, avoiding the main lobby where he'd worked with pride just yesterday. His phone buzzed again. Evelyn, this is manufactured lies. My lawyers are already on it. You're bored? Silence stretched before she answered. They're concerned. Marshall's threatening to pull $8 million in pledged donations from allied donors. Maybe you should distance yourself. The kitchen matters more than, don't you dare finish that sentence, Gabriel Alvarez, but he heard the strain in her voice. The calculation she'd have to make between one man and hundreds who needed feeding. At home, mail waited. Legal documents, thick and official, Marshall Pike versus Luz Mendez and Evelyn Hart. Defamation, slander, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The numbers made Gabe's vision blur. Millions in damages sought. Sophia found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills. Dad, what happened? He tried to smile. Just some complications at work. I saw the blog. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands shook. It's lies. You know that. I know that. But sometimes lies dressed up fancy fool people. She started dinner spaghetti, their poverty meal, though she didn't call it that anymore. They ate in careful silence, Sophia chattering about school to fill the void. She cleared dishes with determined cheer, humming the melody from last night's performance. Then the dam broke. The plate she was washing slipped, shattering on the floor. Sophia crumpled, sobbing. We're going to lose everything again, aren't we? Just like when Mom died. The apartment, my violin lessons, everything. Gabe pulled her close, feeling her shake against him. Listen to me. We've survived worse than this. But it's not fair. You didn't do anything wrong. I know, baby. I know. They're destroying you because you stood up for Luz, because you wouldn't let them hurt people. He held her tighter, his 15-year-old daughter, forced to understand the world's cruelty too young. We'll get through this together. You and me. Like always. What if we can't? What if? Then we'll figure it out. One day at a time. That's all we can do. She cried herself empty, then went to bed early. Gabe heard her violin through the wall, not practicing, just playing random notes, seeking comfort in sound. He returned to the kitchen table. The suspension letter, the legal documents, the utility bills already stretching them thin. His savings, $2,000 that represented years of scrimping, wouldn't last a month without his hotel wages. His hands trembled as he did the math. Rent, $400. Utilities, $200. Food, $300. Sophia's violin lessons, $240. Phone, $80. The numbers swam, red and merciless. A text from Evelyn, don't give up, truth wins. But truth needed time, and time cost money they didn't have. Another text, this one from Pastor Ruth. Praying for you. The community won't forget who you really are. Wouldn't they? He'd seen how quickly opinion shifted when scandal touched someone, how whispers became verdicts. Outside, Harborview slept. Somewhere, Marshall Pike rested in Egyptian cotton sheets, satisfied with the day's destruction. Somewhere, Luz held Mateo, both terrified of deportation threats, hidden in legal language. Somewhere, Evelyn faced her board, fighting for a kitchen that might die before it truly lived. Gabe stared at his trembling hands, hands that had served thousands of meals, comforted dying patients, held his daughter through grief, now shaking over numbers that wouldn't add up. The watch he'd supposedly stolen was worth $8,000, more than he'd save in 4 years. The lie was worth more than his truth. He folded the papers carefully, turned off the light, but didn't move, just sat in darkness, hands still trembling, wondering how tall men could fall so fast. The knock came at dinner the next evening, soft, professional. The kind that brought bad news wrapped in bureaucracy. "Mr. Alvarez? I'm Sandra Chen from Child Protective Services." The woman at his door wore sensible shoes and a patient smile. Behind her stood a police officer. "Just for protocol," she assured him. Sophia appeared in the hallway, math textbook still in her hands. "May I come in?" Gabe stepped aside, his body moving while his mind screamed. The apartment was clean, he'd made sure of that even in crisis. No dishes in the sink. Sophia's homework spread across the table. Evidence of a functioning home. "We received a complaint." Ms. Chen settled on their worn couch, clipboard ready, regarding unstable employment and potentially unsafe conditions for a minor. "Dad?" Sophia's voice pitched high. "It's okay, baby." But it wasn't. Nothing about this was okay. "Mr. Alvarez, I understand you were recently suspended from your position at the Harborview Hotel?" "Yes, but it's based on false accusations. My employer knows." "And you have no current income?" "I have savings. I'm looking for temporary work." Ms. Chen made notes. "Any other adults in the home?" "No." "Family support system?" "My wife passed 3 years ago. We don't have local relatives." More notes. The scratch of pen on paper sounded like judgment. "Dad's a good father." Sophia stepped forward, chin raised. "He works 2 jobs to take care of me. He helps at church. I'm sure he is, sweetheart." Ms. Chen's kindness made it worse. "But we have to follow protocol when complaints are filed." "What complaint?" Who would? But Gabe knew. Marshall's reach extended everywhere. "I'm not at liberty to discuss the source. However, given the current instability, I need to place Sophia with an approved guardian temporarily." "No!" Sophia's textbook hit the floor. "This is just temporary," Ms. Chen repeated, "until we can complete our assessment. You can't take her. She's all I have." "Mr. Alvarez, please understand. This isn't punitive. It's protective." "Protective from what?" "From me?" The door opened. Pastor Ruth entered without knocking, her timing too perfect to be coincidence. "I heard there might be a situation here." Ms. Chen brightened. "Pastor Ellison, are you familiar with this family?" "Intimately. I've known them since before Maria passed. Gabe Alvarez is one of the finest fathers I've encountered in 40 years of ministry. Would you consider serving as temporary guardian? It would keep Sophia in familiar surroundings." Gabe's legs nearly gave out. Ruth's house instead of strangers. Small mercy and tremendous cruelty. "Of course," Ruth said, "though this is entirely unnecessary." "Dad, no. Please." Sophia grabbed his arm. "I won't go." "They can't make me." "Baby." His voice cracked. "I'll run away. I'll come right back here." "Sophia, please. It's just for a few days. Pastor Ruth will take good care of you." "I don't want her to take care of me. I want to stay home." Ms. Chen stood. "Sophia, you have 15 minutes to pack necessities. We need to process the placement tonight." Sophia ran to her room, slamming the door. Gabe followed, found her throwing clothes into her school backpack, tears streaming. "This is because you helped Luz, isn't it? Because you wouldn't let them bully her." "Sophia, it's not fair." "I know." She grabbed her violin case, holding it like armor. "What if they don't let me come back?" "They will, I promise." "You can't promise that." 15 years old, and she understood promises could break despite best intentions. He helped her pack. Pajamas. School uniforms. The photo of her mother from her nightstand. Her phone charger. Such ordinary things for an extraordinary cruelty. The front door opened again. Evelyn's voice, sharp with disbelief. "What is happening here?" She appeared in Sophia's doorway, taking in the scene instantly. "This is Marshall's doing." "Ms. Hart," Ms. Chen called from the living room. "This is a family matter." "This family matters to me." Evelyn crossed to Gabe, gripped his shoulders. "I'll call my lawyers immediately. We'll file an emergency injunction. Tonight, she has to go." Pastor Ruth said gently from the doorway. "The law requires compliance. but we'll fight it tomorrow." Sophia emerged with her backpack and violin. She looked so small. Gabe pulled her close, memorizing the feeling of his daughter in his arms. "I love you more than all the stars, and I love you more than all the sand," she whispered back, their ritual since she was tiny. "Be good for Pastor Ruth." "This isn't your fault, Dad." But it was. He'd stood up to power, and power hit back where it hurt most. Pastor Ruth took Sophia's bag. "Come on, sweetheart, I've got your room ready." Sophia walked to the door, stopped, ran back for one more hug. Then she was gone, her violin case disappearing down the hallway. The apartment fell silent. Gabe's knees buckled. Evelyn caught him, guided him to the couch. He collapsed against her, grief pouring out in waves. "I'm failing her. I'm failing as a father." "No." Evelyn held him tight, her own tears falling. "You're being punished for being a good man. There's a difference. She's everything. Without her, I'm nothing." "That's not true. And this is not the end." They sat in gathering darkness, Gabe shaking with loss. Eventually, Evelyn had to leave lawyers to call, battles to plan. She promised to return. Gabe walked to Sophia's room, her bed still unmade from mourning. Her sheet still smelled like her shampoo, vanilla, and strawberries. He sat on the narrow mattress, pulled the sheet to his chest, and held on like it could anchor him to earth. The violin music from her practice yesterday seemed to echo in the walls. Ghost notes from a stolen child. His daughter's empty room, his trembling hands, the sheet that still held her warmth. This was what standing up cost. This was the price of truth. The phone rang at 5:47 a.m. Gabe hadn't slept, just stared at Sophia's ceiling stars, the glow-in-the-dark constellation she'd mapped in 4th grade. "Get dressed?" Evelyn's voice cut through his fog. "Pastor Ruth's church, 1 hour." "What?" "Trust me." The walk to First Methodist took him past the hotel. His suspended badge felt like a phantom weight in his pocket. The harbor fog rolled thick, muffling the world. The church basement hummed with voices. Gabe stopped at the doorway, blinking. Dozens of people filled the fellowship hall. Veterans from the kitchen. Hotel staff, not just servers, but housekeeping, maintenance, even accounting. Mrs. Chen from the corner grocery. Tony from the hardware store. There he is. Pastor Ruth crossed the worn linoleum, pulled him into the room. "What is this?" "This is Harbor View showing up." Evelyn stood near the coffee urns, still in yesterday's clothes. Dark circles under her eyes said she hadn't slept either. "Marshall Pike thinks he owns this town," she addressed the crowd. "He's wrong." Old Pete Kowalski, who'd served in Korea and now trained kitchen veterans in knife skills, stood first. "Gabe covered my shifts when Helen had her stroke. Never asked for the favor returned, never mentioned it again. He tutored my grandson in math," Mrs. Chen added. "Wouldn't take payment." One by one, they spoke. Small kindnesses, unnoticed graces. The accumulated weight of a decent life lived quietly. Luz sat in the back row, Mateo coloring beside her. She stood slowly. "I'm sorry. This is happening because I finally told the truth." "No," Gabe said. "This is happening because Marshall Pike is a bully." "Then we stop him," said a voice from the doorway. Mr. Dawkins entered, which caused a stir. The hotel manager never picked sides. "I've worked at the Harbor View for 38 years, seen a lot of good people crushed by powerful men." He reached into his coat, pulled out a flash drive. "Not this time." He handed it to Gabe. Untouched security footage from the gala. Every angle, every timestamp. "You never touched that watch?" The room erupted. Evelyn grabbed the drive like it was gold. "This proves the video was doctored." "I kept copies of everything," Dawkins continued. "Always have. Management thinks I'm just a nervous old fool, but I've learned to protect myself. And now, I'm protecting you." Gabe's throat tightened. "You could lose your job." "Some things matter more than jobs." Dr. Patricia Wong, who'd retired from the medical center last year, raised her hand. "About the boy's paternity. I still have colleagues at the lab. We can arrange a proper DNA test. Legal chain of custody. Court admissible. Luz looked terrified and hopeful simultaneously. Would Marshall comply? He'll have to, Evelyn said. Once we file papers, refusal equals admission. The hotel's union representative, Marcus, stood next. The union's been documenting Marshall's pressure tactics for years. Threats to pull funding if we didn't vote certain ways. Demands to fire workers who caused problems. We have records. Each revelation added weight. The room filled with something Gabe hadn't felt in years: collective power. Pastor Ruth? A small voice from the stairwell. Sophia stood there in yesterday's clothes, violin case in hand. Baby, what are you doing here? I have practice at 8. Thought I'd come early. Her eyes swept the crowd. What's happening? Your father has an army, Ruth said simply. Sophia's face crumpled. She ran to Gabe, buried her face in his chest. See? She whispered. You're not nothing. Look at all these people. Tommy Martinez, who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan and now worked kitchen prep, cleared his throat. We're scheduling a march. From here to City Hall. Peaceful, respectful, but visible. When? Tomorrow. Noon. The mayor won't like that, someone muttered. The mayor can deal with it, Evelyn said. I've already called 3 news stations. They're very interested in how Marshall Pike separates children from their fathers. Gabe felt the room's energy shifting, from grief to anger to something stronger: determination. There's more, Dawkins said quietly. The night Marshall threatened Luz by the elevators, I have that footage too. Audio's unclear, but his body language, her fear, it tells a story. Why didn't you? I was protecting my pension. I'm not proud of it. But I'm done being a coward. Pastor Ruth moved to the center of the room. Before we go further, let's be clear about something. This isn't just about Gabe or Luz or Mateo. This is about what kind of town we want to be. Do we let money buy silence? Do we let power crush truth? A chorus of no filled the basement. Then we stand together, we tell the truth together, we fight together. Gabe looked around the room. These people, some he'd known for years, others barely at all, risking comfort for justice. His eyes met Evelyn's across the crowd. She nodded once, firm. Hope. Fragile as spun glass, but real. Sophia squeezed his hand. We're going to win, aren't we, Dad? For the first time since she'd been taken, he believed they might. 2 days later, the courtroom smelled of old wood and floor polish. Gabe sat in the gallery's 3rd row, directly behind Evelyn and Luz. His hands gripped his knees to keep them steady. Judge Clara Rowe entered without ceremony. No dramatic sweep of robes, just a woman with gray hair and reading glasses, taking her seat like she had a job to do. We're here for case 2847B, regarding paternity and related matters. She glanced at the packed courtroom. I'll remind everyone that outbursts won't be tolerated. Marshall Pike sat at the defendant's table, his attorney whispering urgently. His usual confidence had curdled into something defensive. Let's begin with the DNA evidence, Judge Rowe said. Dr. Wong took the stand. Her testimony was clinical, precise. Blood drawn, chain of custody maintained, laboratory certified. Results conclusive. The probability that Marshall Pike is the biological father of Mateo Mendez is 99.97%. The courtroom stirred. Marshall's jaw clenched. That's those tests can be wrong, Marshall started. Mr. Pike, you'll have your opportunity to speak through counsel, Judge Rowe said. Dr. Wong, is there any reasonable doubt about these results? None whatsoever. Luz pressed a tissue to her eyes. Beside her, Mateo swung his legs, humming softly, unaware his world was shifting. Marshall's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client questions the collection methods. Your client agreed to the test parameters. His own physician observed the collection. Next argument, the attorney faltered. We'd like to discuss custody arrangements. We'll get there. First, let's address the related matters. Ms. Hart's attorney? Evelyn's lawyer, A sharp woman named Christine Bailey stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence regarding Mr. Pike's pattern of intimidation." "Proceed." The courtroom screens lit up. Security footage from the Harborview Hotel. Date stamp clear, time stamp precise. The video showed the gala in full swing. There was Gabe, carrying his tray of wine. The collision, the spill. His hands clearly visible the entire time, both occupied, never near anyone's pockets or wrists. "This is the unedited footage provided by hotel management," Christine said. "Now, here's what Mr. Pike's associates circulated." The second video played. Same scene. But suddenly Gabe's hand jerked unnaturally, seemed to dip toward a guest's wrist. A watch disappeared into his pocket, except the pocket bulge appeared before his hand moved. Digital forensics confirmed extensive tampering, Christine continued. Pixels cloned, timeline disrupted, objects inserted. Judge Rowe's expression hardened. "Mr. Pike, did you authorize this fabrication?" Marshall's attorney objected. "That's presumptive. I'll rephrase. Mr. Pike, were you aware this video was circulated to damage Mr. Alvarez's reputation?" Marshall muttered something. "Louder, please. I may have heard about it. And did you attempt to correct the record when you learned it was false?" Silence. "I'll take that as a no." Christine presented more evidence. The threatening letters to Evelyn's foundation, pressure on hotel management to fire Gabe, the anonymous CPS complaint that followed, suspicious timing. "Your Honor," Marshall's attorney interrupted, "these are separate matters. They establish pattern and character. Continue, Ms. Bailey." The final piece of evidence made Gabe's chest tight. Audio from the hotel elevator bank the night Mateo spoke his truth. Marshall's voice, low but clear. "You keep that boy quiet, or I'll make sure you never work in this state again." Luz shuddered. Evelyn reached over, squeezed her shoulder. Judge Rowe removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly. "Mr. Pike, please stand." Marshall rose, his face flushed. "Let me be clear about what I see here. A powerful man who fathered a child with a vulnerable employee who threatened her into silence. Who, when confronted with truth, attempted to destroy the reputations and livelihoods of anyone who supported that truth. Your Honor, I'm not finished. You fabricated evidence against Mr. Alvarez. You weaponized Child Protective Services against a devoted father. You used your wealth and influence as a cudgel." She turned to Luz. "Ms. Mendez, the court recognizes the courage it took to come forward. Regarding custody, Mateo will remain in your sole physical custody. Mr. Pike will have supervised visitation 2 hours weekly, pending completion of parenting classes and therapy." "That's ridiculous," Marshall started. "What's ridiculous, Mr. Pike, is that you've gone 7 years without acknowledging your son. The court orders immediate child support backdated to birth plus interest. Additionally, you'll establish a college fund." Marshall's attorney whispered urgently. "Furthermore," Judge Rowe continued, "your countersuit against Ms. Mendez and Ms. Hart is dismissed with prejudice. It's frivolous, retaliatory, and borders on malicious prosecution." She fixed Marshall with a stare that could freeze water. "If you attempt any further intimidation of these parties, any contact outside official channels, any pressure through third parties, any manipulation of systems meant to protect children, I will hold you in contempt and pursue criminal charges. Am I clear?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Alvarez?" Gabe startled. "Yes, ma'am." "The court apologizes for what you've endured. The CPS case against you is dismissed. Your daughter should be returned immediately." His vision blurred. Evelyn's hand found his, gripped tight. "This court is adjourned." The gavel fell like thunder. Luz sobbed openly, pulling Mateo close. The boy patted her face. "Why are you crying, Mommy? Happy tears, baby, happy tears." Marshall stormed out, his attorney scrambling behind. The courtroom erupted in conversation. Evelyn turned to Gabe, her professional composure cracking. "It's over." "Is it?" "The legal part." The rest rebuilding, that's just beginning. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Evelyn handled them with grace, while Gabe slipped away to call Pastor Ruth. "Bring her home," Ruth said before he could speak. "She's already packing." The parsonage door flew open before Gabe reached the porch steps. Sophia stood there, violin case clutched to her chest, face wet with tears. She dropped the case, something she never did, and launched herself at him. "Dad!" He caught her, lifted her off her feet, though she was nearly as tall as him now. She buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing hard enough to shake them both. "I'm here, mija. I'm here. I knew you'd fix it. I knew you would." His own tears came then, hot and sudden. "Not just me. We had help." Pastor Ruth appeared in the doorway, Sophia's duffel bag in hand. Her eyes shone wet behind her glasses. "Every one of her things is packed. She's been ready since dawn." Sophia pulled back just enough to look at her father's face. "Is it really over?" the judge said. "CPS case dismissed. No more investigations. No more accusations. And Mr. Pike? Has to tell the truth now. Has to make things right with Luz and Mateo." Sophia's grip tightened. "I was so scared, Dad. When they said I had to leave, I thought," her voice cracked, "I thought I'd lose you like we lost Mom." "Never." He smoothed her hair back from her face. "You're stuck with me, kiddo. Forever and then some." Pastor Ruth cleared her throat. "Someone else has been waiting." Evelyn stood by her car, giving them space but unable to hide her smile. "Ms. Hart drove you here?" Sophia asked. "Wouldn't let me take the bus. Said today was too important for public transportation." Sophia surprised them all by walking straight to Evelyn and hugging her. Evelyn stiffened for a heartbeat, then melted into it, one hand gentle on Sophia's back. "Thank you for helping my dad." "Your dad helped himself. I just made some phone calls, and hired lawyers, and found evidence, and stood up to Mr. Pike." Sophia pulled back, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "Dad told me everything on the phone. How you didn't back down even when your board threatened you. Your father would have done the same for me." "Yeah," Sophia said softly. "He would." The ride home felt like floating. Sophia sat in the back, alternating between animated chatter about Pastor Ruth teaching her a new psalm and sudden quiet stretches where she'd reach forward to touch Gabe's shoulder, making sure he was real. "Can we get pizza?" she asked suddenly. "I've been dreaming about Antonio's pizza for 3 days." "Anything you want?" Gabe said. "Dangerous promise," Evelyn murmured, and Sophia actually laughed. Their apartment had never looked so beautiful. Sophia ran from room to room like she was seeing it for the first time. She straightened the crooked picture of her mother on the hallway wall, fluffed the ancient couch cushions, opened every window to let the evening air in. Then she grabbed her violin. The first notes wobbled. Her fingers, tight with emotion, couldn't find their usual grace. But she pushed through, and soon Mendelssohn's Spring Song filled the small space. Not perfect, she missed a shift in the second passage, but alive. Wonderfully, brilliantly alive. Gabe sank into the doorway of her room, eyes closed, letting the music wash over him. 3 nights without this sound had felt like 3 years. The melody shifted. Something new. A piece she'd been practicing for her scholarship audition, Barber's Adagio, arranged for solo violin. The notes hung in the air like prayers. When he opened his eyes, Evelyn stood beside him, one hand pressed to her heart. "She's remarkable," she whispered. "Gets it from her mother. The courage comes from you." Sophia played for 20 minutes, working through her repertoire like she was reclaiming each piece. Finally, she lowered the violin, turned to find them both watching. "Too much?" "Never enough," Gabe said. She set the instrument carefully in its case, then threw herself on her bed with dramatic relief. "My own bed. You don't know how lumpy Pastor Ruth's guest bed is. I mean, she's wonderful, but that mattress has seen better decades." While Sophia unpacked, Evelyn pulled Gabe aside in the kitchen. "Tomorrow, we restart the kitchen. Bigger than before. The board had an emergency meeting after the verdict. They're unanimously behind us now. Amazing how quickly spines grow when the truth comes out. She smiled, but it had an edge. Marshall's resignation from all philanthropic boards was strongly encouraged. Will he actually stay away? Judge Rowe put the fear of God in him, or at least the fear of jail. She touched his arm lightly. We won. All of us. Feels surreal. Good things do sometimes. Her hand lingered a moment longer. I should go. Let you two have your evening. Evelyn. He caught her hand as she turned. Thank you. For everything. For believing us, when it would have been easier not to. My husband once told me that kindness has a long memory, that if you do right by people, it comes back when you need it most. She squeezed his fingers. He was talking about you, that night in the hospital. You came back when we needed it most. After she left, Gabe made Sophia's favorite grilled cheese with tomato soup, nothing fancy but exactly what she wanted. They ate on the couch, watching an old movie, her feet tucked under his arm. Dad? She said during a commercial. Yeah? I like her. Ms. Hart. Me too. I really like her, for you. He studied his daughter's face, this wise child who'd seen too much. One thing at a time, mija. Just saying, Mom would want you happy. Later, after Sophia showered and changed into her own pajamas, Pastor Ruth's spare nightgown made me look like a Victorian ghost. Gabe knelt beside her bed. Want to pray together? She nodded, scooting over to make room. They held hands in the darkness. Thank you, he whispered, for second chances, for people who stand up. For judges who see truth, for daughters who are braver than their fathers, for fathers who never give up, Sophia added, for Ms. Hart, for Pastor Ruth, for violin music and grilled cheese and home, amen. Amen. Sophia squeezed his hand. We're going to be okay now, aren't we? Better than okay. She was asleep in minutes, her breathing deep and even. Gabe stayed there on his knees a moment longer, whispering one more prayer of gratitude into the darkness. Tomorrow they would restart. Tonight, they were home. The community kitchen gleamed under morning sunlight, streaming through new windows. Folding chairs filled the main dining hall, packed with veterans, townspeople, and 3 news crews. The smell of fresh paint, mixed with coffee brewing in the industrial kitchen. Gabe stood near the back, tugging at his collar. The button-down shirt felt foreign after years of server uniforms. Stop fidgeting, Sophia whispered beside him. You look great. I look like I borrowed someone else's clothes. You look like a director. The word still felt impossible. Him. Director of anything. Evelyn stepped to the podium, and the crowd quieted. She wore a simple navy dress, professional but approachable. No designer suit today. This was about community, not status. Thank you all for coming. Her voice carried without a microphone. This week, our town faced a choice. Stand with truth, even when it's costly, or let power silence justice. You chose truth. Applause rippled through the room. A veteran in the third row whistled approval. Effective immediately, the Hart Foundation has severed all partnerships with Marshall Pike and his affiliated organizations. The reporters scribbled frantically. Camera flashes popped. But we're not here to dwell on the past. We're here to build something better. Evelyn gestured to the renovated space around them. Hart, Home Community Kitchen, will not only provide meals and job training. We're implementing new protections for all workers. She outlined each point clearly. Legal aid for any staff member facing discrimination or retaliation. Child care stipends for working parents. Whistleblower protections with anonymous reporting systems. No one should choose between their dignity and their paycheck. The veterans erupted in applause. Gabe saw Luz near the kitchen entrance, Mateo on her hip, tears sliding down her face. These changes require leadership from someone who understands service, sacrifice, and what it means to rebuild after loss. Evelyn's eyes found Gabe in the crowd. Gabriel Alvarez, would you come forward? His legs felt like water. Sophia gave him a gentle push. Go, Dad. The walk to the podium stretched forever. People turned to watch. Some smiled, others nodded encouragement. Pastor Ruth, sitting in the front row, winked at him. Evelyn extended her hand as he climbed the small platform. I'm honored to announce that Mr. Alvarez has accepted the position of Director of Heart, Home Community Kitchen. The room exploded. Veterans stamped their feet. Hotel staff who'd snuck in on break cheered. Sophia's whistle pierced through everything she'd learned that from watching soccer with him. Gabe's hands shook as he took the microphone. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. A month ago, I was worried about making rent, worried about keeping my daughter in violin lessons, worried I was failing her as a father. The room grew quiet. This community proved that none of us fails alone, and none of us succeeds alone either. He found Sophia's face in the crowd. She blew him a kiss. Every meal we serve here, every veteran we train, every family we help, it's not charity. It's investment. In each other. In tomorrow. That's right, someone shouted from the back. Ms. Hart asked me to lead this kitchen, but truth is, we'll lead it together. Every one of you who stood up this week, who refused to let fear win, you're the real directors here. Evelyn touched his elbow gently, resuming control of the microphone. There's one more announcement. Luz Mendez has shown extraordinary courage in recent weeks. We're pleased to offer her a permanent position in guest relations, with flexible hours to accommodate her son's schedule. Proppen. Luz gasped, nearly dropping Mateo. The women around her immediately embraced her. Furthermore, Evelyn continued, her son Mateo will be the first recipient of our new Bright Futures childcare program, ensuring working parents never have to choose between providing for their children and being present for them. Mr. Dawkins, standing near the door in his hotel uniform, started clapping slowly. Others joined until the sound thundered through the space. The press conference continued another 20 minutes. Reporters asked about funding sources, training programs, expansion plans. Evelyn fielded each question smoothly, while Gabe stood beside her, still adjusting to the weight of his new reality. Finally, the formal portion ended. People mingled, sampling pastries the kitchen team had prepared at dawn. Gabe found himself surrounded by veterans, all talking at once about menu ideas and training schedules. We could do a rotating cultural menu, suggested James, who'd served in Iraq. Show the town what real Middle Eastern food tastes like. Sunday soul food, added Deacon, the Navy cook. My grandmother's recipes. Their enthusiasm was infectious. Gabe pulled out his phone, taking notes as fast as they talked. Sophia appeared at his elbow with a plate of food. You need to eat. I'm not hungry. You're nervous. Eat anyway. He took a bite of quiche. It was perfect light, fluffy, with just enough cheese. His stomach unknotted slightly. Mr. Alvarez? A young reporter approached. How does it feel, going from server to director overnight? He considered the question. Like I'm finally using everything I learned in service. In the Army, we said no one gets left behind. This kitchen, it's the same mission. Different battlefield. The reporter nodded, jotting notes. As the crowd began dispersing, Evelyn found him by the coffee station. How are you holding up? Overwhelmed, grateful, terrified. Perfect. That's exactly how you should feel when life changes this much. She straightened his collar absently. You're going to be wonderful at this. How do you know? Because you've already been doing it. Every time you helped a fellow veteran find work, every shift you covered for someone with a sick kid. You just didn't have the title before. Gabe stood at the window, watching people leave. The November sun painted everything gold. His reflection in the glass showed a man he barely recognized, standing straighter, eyes brighter. Director Gabriel Alvarez. It sounded impossible. It sounded right. A week had passed since the press conference, and the November air carried the scent of cinnamon and grilled corn. The Riverwalk Festival stretched along the harbor, booths and tents creating a maze of color against the gray lake. Gabe's hands moved without thinking, ladling soup, passing plates, making change. The kitchen's booth hummed with controlled chaos. Veterans in matching aprons worked the grills and warming stations. "Order up," Deacon called, sliding 2 plates forward. Pulled pork, extra slaw. The line stretched 20 deep. Families, couples, kids clutching dollar bills their parents had given them. Each transaction felt like validation. "Mr. Alvarez," a woman approached the counter. Margaret Chen, whose husband had served with him at Fort Bragg. "Tommy heard about the kitchen program. He wants to apply." "Send him by Monday. We're starting a new training cohort." Her eyes misted. "He hasn't wanted to do anything since he got back. This gives him something to wake up for." Before he could respond, applause erupted from the bandstand. Sophia stood center stage, violin tucked under her chin. The late afternoon sun caught the burgundy dress Evelyn had insisted on buying her. The first notes of Amazing Grace floated across the festival. But Sophia had reworked it, adding jazz progressions that transformed the hymn into something both ancient and new. The crowd fell silent. Gabe abandoned his ladle. James smoothly took over without being asked. That's what good units did. He moved through the crowd until he could see her clearly. His daughter, no longer the frightened girl from 2 weeks ago. She played with her whole body, swaying into the difficult passages. "That your girl?" An older man beside him whispered, "Yeah, you done good." The music built to a crescendo that had nothing to do with traditional arrangement. Sophia had composed this section herself, she'd told him, inspired by everything that happened. The notes climbed and tumbled, chaos resolving into harmony. Near the playground, Mateo's laugh rang out. Marshall Pike, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a Michigan State sweatshirt, carried the boy on his shoulders. Luz walked beside them, head high. People stared, whispered, but she didn't flinch. "Higher," Mateo commanded, and Marshall obliged, making airplane noises that sounded forced but earnest. Judge Rowe's supervised visitation order had been specific. Public spaces, Luz present. 2 hours weekly. But watching them now, Gabe saw something shifting. Marshall's hand steadied Mateo carefully. When the boy dropped his cotton candy, Marshall bought another without complaint. Sophia's piece ended to thunderous applause. She curtsied something she'd learned from YouTube and practically floated off stage. "Dad!" She crashed into him, violin case bumping his hip. "Did you see? Nobody messed up. The sound system worked. You were perfect. Perfect's boring. I was better than perfect." He laughed, squeezing her shoulders. The festival continued as dusk painted everything purple. Food vendors switched on string lights. The indie rock band from the high school took the stage. Couples began dancing on the grass. Evelyn appeared beside them, holding 3 cups of hot cider. "Thought you could use this." Sophia grabbed hers and immediately burned her tongue. "Hot. That's why they call it hot cider," Evelyn said dryly. They stood together watching the crowd. Mr. Dawkins passed, nodding respectfully. The hotel workers who'd testified waved. Even the blogger who'd written the hit piece shuffled by, unable to meet their eyes but present nonetheless. "Look," Sophia pointed. Paper lanterns were being distributed. "A Riverwalk tradition, write a wish, release it to the sky." Sophia grabbed 3, passing them out. "What are you wishing for?" Evelyn asked her. "Can't tell. Won't come true." Gabe wrote carefully on his lantern, "For second chances to become lasting change." The sun disappeared behind the buildings. Someone counted down from 10, and hundreds of lanterns rose simultaneously, orange dots against the darkening sky, carrying hopes upward. Music drifted from the bandstand, something slow, nostalgic. Couples moved toward the makeshift dance floor. "Sophia, go find Pastor Ruth," Gabe said. "She wanted to hear about your performance." His daughter gave him a knowing look, but obeyed. Evelyn stood beside him at the riverside rail, watching lanterns reflect in the water. "Dance?" she asked. "I haven't danced since—" He stopped. "Neither have I." They moved to the edge of the crowd, where the grass met the riverwalk. Her hand was warm in his. They found a rhythm quickly, naturally, as if they'd done this before. "Thank you," he said into her hair. "For what?" "Everything. The job. Fighting for us. Being here." She pulled back slightly to see his face. "You saved my husband's spirit when he thought he was dying alone. Everything else is just balance returning. That's not just dance." They moved together as the music shifted to something newer. Around them, the town danced too. Marshall teaching Mateo to two-step. Luz laughing with the hotel housekeeping staff. Veterans from the kitchen program spinning their wives. The lanterns drifted higher, some already disappearing into the distance. Their light shimmered on the water like scattered stars. Evelyn's head found his shoulder. They swayed more than danced now, holding each other like survivors of the same storm. "What happens next?" he asked. "Whatever we choose." The music continued. The town celebrated around them, and for the first time in years, Joy felt trustworthy enough to lean into. The community kitchen smelled like heaven should yeast and butter, roasted vegetables, and simmering stock. Gabe adjusted his chef whites for the third time, the fabric still crisp from its first washing. "Stop fidgeting," Evelyn said beside him. "You look good." He did feel good. Different from the borrowed waiter's tuxedo, different from his army dress uniform. These whites belonged to him, had his name embroidered over the pocket. Gabriel Alvarez, director. Veterans moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency. Tommy, the Navy cook, barked friendly orders at the prep station. Marcus, who'd lost his leg in Kandahar, manned the grill with an artist's precision. They'd trained for 3 weeks solid, turning nervous energy into knife skills and perfect timing. 5 minutes, someone called. Through the service window, Gabe watched the dining room fill. Families with children, elderly couples, young professionals on lunch break, not a charity case in sight, just neighbors coming for good food at prices anyone could afford. Sophia and Mateo had claimed the front table, heads bent together over Sophia's phone. She was teaching him some game involving animated cats. Every few seconds, Mateo's laugh bubbled up, pure and unself-conscious. "That your daughter?" Marcus asked, glancing out. "Yeah. She's got your smile. The real one, not the customer service one." Pastor Ruth entered, her Sunday dress replaced with practical slacks. She moved through the crowd, touching shoulders, sharing words. When she reached Sophia's table, she bent to whisper something that made both children giggle harder. The kitchen timer buzzed. "Bread ready." "Places, everyone," Gabe called. The veteran snapped to attention, not military stiff, but ready, alert, proud. Evelyn addressed the crowd from the dining room center. No microphone needed. Her voice carried natural authority. 3 months ago, a man spilled wine on my designer suit. Laughter rippled. "Best thing that ever happened to me." She spoke about second chances, community, the radical act of feeding people well. But Gabe barely heard the words, watching instead how the light caught her face, how her hands moved when she talked about things that mattered. "Before we begin," she continued, "I want you to hear from the man who makes this possible." "Gabe?" His throat went dry. Public speaking had never been his strength. But Sophia gave him a thumbs up from her table, and suddenly his feet were moving. The dining room looked different from this angle. Faces turned up expectantly. Some, he recognized Mr. Dawkins in the corner, trying to look casual. The union rep who'd fought for his reinstatement, even Marshall Pike, standing awkwardly by the door, present because Mateo had insisted. "I'm not good at speeches," Gabe began. Truth seemed the right foundation. 3 months ago I was just trying to get through a shift without dropping anything. Soft laughter. Now I'm standing here because people believed I was worth more than my mistakes. Because a community decided that everyone deserves dignity with their daily bread. He found Luz in the crowd, wearing her new guest services blazer, Mateo's hand in hers. "This kitchen isn't charity. It's what happens when we see each other, really see each other, the veteran who needs work, The single parent juggling everything. The billionaire who remembers being a waitress. Evelyn's eyes glistened. So today, we serve more than food. We serve hope. We serve belonging. We serve the radical notion that everyone has value. He lifted the brass service bell, the same type that once made his pulse race at the hotel. Let's eat. The ring cut clear and bright through the room. Not anxious anymore, but triumphant. The crowd erupted. Applause, whistles, Sophia's voice cutting through. That's my dad. Veterans emerged from the kitchen carrying the first plates. Tomato soup with grilled cheese, soldiers' comfort food, elevated but not fussy. Fresh salad with herbs from the roof garden they'd started. Bread still warm from the oven. Pastor Ruth stood to bless the meal, her words simple and true. For food that nourishes, hands that serve, and hearts that see each other clearly. Amen. The room filled with conversation, the clink of real silverware on real plates. No plastic, no paper. Everyone deserved better than disposable. Evelyn found him in the kitchen doorway, watching the organized chaos of service. "You did it," she said. "We did it." Her hand found his, fingers interlacing naturally. Through the service window, he watched Sophia showing Matteo how to properly dip his grilled cheese. The boy copied her exactly, then laughed when cheese stretched impossibly long. "Your daughter's good with him," Evelyn observed. "She always wanted a sibling. Maybe she'll get one, eventually." The words hung between them, possibility dressed as casual observation. Tommy called from the kitchen, "Second wave, chef." "Chef?" The title still felt foreign but not wrong. "Go," Evelyn said. "I'll handle the front." But she squeezed his hand before letting go, a promise in the pressure. The afternoon flew, plate after plate, the kitchen finding its rhythm. No one left hungry. When the last customer departed, the veterans collapsed at the staff table, exhausted but glowing. "We did good," Marcus said. "We did great," Tommy corrected. Gabe looked around the kitchen, his kitchen, at these men who'd trusted him to lead them toward something better. Through the window, Sophia helped Matteo stack chairs, while Evelyn counted the till and Luz wiped tables. 3 months ago, red wine had spread across white fabric like a prophecy of disaster. He'd stood frozen, certain his life was ending. Now he understood. Sometimes the stains we fear most become the marks of grace that change everything. If you enjoyed the story, I hand-picked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.